Hey guys, how you doing? It's me. And I've been online and stuff, and like a lot of you guys, I look at a lot of these things online and on the internet, and I've noticed a lot of times they ask questions of what people miss or what's the best thing now since the internet and everything. And probably like a lot of you, I'm a child of the 90s. I got my driver's license in 1982. I graduated high school in 84. And I was talking at different car shows and different events, and a lot of the people like you guys, when I come and meet you, a lot of conversations get around to what's the difference of hot rodding now, or what's the difference of the car culture now that is different from our generation, which is the prior to the cell phone internet generation, and now. And so I kind of put together a little list of about 25 things here, and I want to get your opinion on this kind of stuff. So these are the things that I came up with, which are things that if you were born basically after or came of age after the 1990s, you'll never get to experience. So these are things that maybe we took for granted, or maybe I know a lot of the stuff I miss from the prior to the internet generation, prior to having a cell phone and the internet in the car. All right, guys, so let's look at a couple of ones while I'm sitting out here in the garage. So first off, speed shops. And I'm not talking about O'Reilly's, I'm talking about dedicated speed shops. When I was a kid back in the late 70s, early 80s, if you wanted something, you could just go up to a BP speed shop, and you went in and they had engines built up there with blowers and stuff on it. And if you needed a set of headers, or you needed anything, chrome valve covers, or if you needed a specific cam, or you needed some work done, they had speed shops. The internet pretty much killed speed shops because they were pretty much, a lot of them were just independent owned by guys that built cars, and then the internet came out, and if you wanted something, you could just order it from your house. You didn't have to drive over and wait in line and stuff. But the guys that were in there were so knowledgeable. Most of them had built tons of cars, they raced cars, and if you didn't know what you needed, they did. So it's a shame that speed shops went away. Number 2 is junkyards. Now, yeah, my channel, Junkyards and Barn Finds, and we've traveled all over, but listen, over 110,000 miles on this channel, and 15 states, and it's hard to get into junkyards. And a lot of junkyards nowadays, they would rather crush a car, or you can't get in there. They're corporate owned and they don't let you walk through. But back in the day, and that's what inspired this channel, was just deciding to go and check out this old junkyard and walk in, see what they have, and they would sell you stuff. If you found something, you could get it for your car. Number 3, searching Hemmings Motor News or newspaper. So back in the day, before the internet or anything, and people got newspapers all the time, and there was something called Hemmings Motor News. I'm sure it still exists. And it was a big magazine you could pick up at a speed shop or somewhere, and it just had all these cars for sale, normally regionally, but you could get them for the whole US or whatever. And or you wake up and you look around, and there'd be 100 ads that people would take out to sell their used car in the local paper. And that's how I bought most of my cars growing up. You'd see green Chevelle or green Malibu, and you show up there, and instead of a green Malibu, it's a 1971 green with white stripes Chevelle SS 396. So kind of missed that. Number 4, riding in the back of pickup trucks or El Caminos or Rancheros, but just riding it back. I mean, my friend Sam, his dad, Mr. Culp, we all jump in the back of his 69 El Camino and get rides up to the baseball field when we played Little League. So you don't see much of that anymore. I don't even know if it's legal anymore. Number 5, the first thing you did was change the radio out of your car. First thing. Cars did not come with good radios back in the day, and everybody wanted the Jensen or the Alpine or the Blaupunk. And first thing you did was you got yourself a cassette player, and you would have an amplifier that you could put on if you could afford it. But you would get Jensen or Blaupunk. Nobody had Alpine. Alpine came in like Lamborghinis and stuff, so you know, very few people had the Alpine. And you would get a 6x9 set of back speakers, because most cars in the day only came with one speaker, and it was up under the dashboard in the front. They didn't have door speakers or rear speakers, so you would have to build your stereo system when you bought a car. Number 6, affordable used cars. So back in the early 80s, 82, bought my very first vehicle, which was a 72 GMC, or I'm sorry, 72 Chevy C10 pickup truck, and I think I paid $800 for it. Within a couple years, I had bought a $1,300 big block 1970 Chevelle 396 with a 4-speed. I had a 71 Chevelle, had a 69 El Camino, and my best deal ever was buying a 69 Camaro that was blue with a cow induction hood, and it had the spoiler on the back, and it was an automatic car. Drove it home because I wanted to get the rims off it. I paid $300 for the car, drove it home, had a 307 in it, I believe a 307, and took the wheels off it because it had the really nice rally rims, put some junkyard wheels on it, and sold the car for $500, and thought I was a god for doing that. So back in the day, you could work all summer and afford a pretty cool car. And so if you think about it, this was 1982, so let's equal that to 2022. I was buying a 1970 Chevelle big block or a 1969 Camaro for $500. So the cars were 82, 72, the cars were 12 years old. So that would be like buying right now a 2010 for $500 that ran perfect. So yeah, you can't, and I could buy that with working one summer. In one summer you can make enough money to buy yourself a car. All right, number 7, a V8 engine. So V8 engines now are hard to find in any car, unless it's a muscle car, you know, $40,000, $50,000 muscle car. So everything came with a V8 back then. And a V8, if you wanted a 4-speed, I like stick shifts. So V8 with a stick shift, miss those days. Everything had a V8. And that meant that you could take your mom's car and hook basically a car trailer to it, and it had better towing capacity than a pickup truck does today. You take an old 73 Chevy Impala with a full frame, and you stick a tow hitch on that thing, that puppy will pull as much as a 1500 Chevy pickup truck will today. All right, number 8. Cars anybody could work on. So we used many trees with come-alongs. So you would hang the come-along and the strap around a tree branch, pull your car up, and pull your engine out. Didn't need a computer, didn't need much skill. You basically needed a couple sockets and wrenches so that you could unhook the motor mounts, and pair of wire snips, and maybe a razor blade or two to cut the hoses, and you could have an engine pulled out of a Chevy, small block Chevy, you could pull out in less than an hour. And then just buy new hoses, clip the electrics back together, and put a new engine in after a Saturday afternoon. So it's just, I wish we could still do that kind of stuff, but you can't. Number 9, pop-up headlights. So if you had a 924 or a 944 Porsche, or if you had a Stingray Corvette or an 82 Trans Am, A Monza. There's all kinds of cars. The 300ZX. They all had pop-up headlights. I think the 240, the Nissan 240 had pop-ups. A lot of pop-up headlights back in the early 80s. And they went away because there was some kind of a law that passed that said, you know, they were dangerous. Whatever. T-tops. Number 10, T-tops. Again, T-tops, everybody wanted T-tops. I had T-tops on my Camaro. We had T-tops on the Firebird. Had T-tops on the Corvettes. A lot of people had T-tops. Your 300Zs had T-tops. They had full-size cars, Olds 442s in the 70s, Monte Carlos. There was all kinds of... I think the Chrysler Cordoba came with a T-top. Grand Prix, Grand Ams, all these cars would come with T-tops. And then suddenly they went away because they were too dangerous. 11. Never smoked. Never did drugs or anything. But I know ashtrays were a big deal. Lighters and ashtrays. You buy a car, first thing you did was go through and suck with the vacuum and suck out the ashtray under the dash, the 2 ashtrays in each of the front doors, 2 ashtrays in the back. If you had back doors, they'd be in the doors. If not, they'd just be in the corner there. There might be one in the console. But ashtrays, people smoked all the time. And it was not good. But ashtrays were there, and there's always gum stuck in them and everything else. But they just disappeared as well. Number 12, terry cloth type interiors. So this fabric that they had, it was kind of like terry cloth, like a towel. And this was especially in the 80s. A lot of your higher end cars, I mean, my dad's Cadillacs, Park Avenues, Capri Classics, a lot of Chevy, a lot of Ford, they would have this really soft, plush, overstuffed fabric. And don't know what happened to it, but when you grew up in Pennsylvania in the wintertime, it was nice to have. Number 14 is chrome. Real metal chrome, not this chrome covered plastic crap that's on cars now, but actual metal chrome. Miss the chrome. Number 15. When you went to a car dealer, you used to be able to get car brochures. They were from the dealership, and they would have a brochure for every single car. And you could go in there. Some dealers even had models of cars, these little plastic models of a car that you could also get. And if you bought the car, like my dad would buy a car, we could get the model car. You know, tell the dealer, hey, I want a copy. I want one of the model cars too. And a lot of times they would throw it in, especially if it was you're paying list price for the cars. But I used to collect all those brochures. In fact, I still have a bunch. But then people started collecting them like I did, I guess. And they just decided, let's just put it online. It's cheaper. There's no printing. They were high gloss, very expensive. So now they have them for some of the crappier cars. But you're not going to find them for Camaro. I know the Corvettes, they have them. But unless you're a serious buyer, they won't even let you see one. Because I have a couple Corvette ones from recent years, but they basically only give them to you if you buy the Corvette. Next is all kinds of cars. So they had all the different cars. Number 15 is all kinds of cars. So you had Oldsmobiles, you had tons of manufacturers of cars, and you don't have that anymore. Now, if you go to Chrysler, Dodge and Chrysler have like 8 models total. But back in the day, you had Chrysler, Plymouth, and Plymouth alone would have like 7 different models of cars, let alone Dodge would have trucks and cars, and everybody would have a bunch to choose from. You would go to a car dealer, and literally it would be crazy what you would find there. Number 16. Again, talking cars. So you couldn't, now if you want to find a car, you just put in Google, I need a red Chevy Blazer with this trim package and all, and it's going to tell you exactly where it is and how much it is. But you used to be able to haggle. So basically haggling and finding the car you wanted. So you would drive around all day with your parents going, or by yourself. You could drive around, you would look at all these cars, you could haggle prices. And you didn't know, one dealer didn't know what the other dealer was selling the stuff for. So the dealer wanted your business. So that's what they would do, is you could haggle and say, hey, you know, I'm going to go down to this other dealer. And they may have, nobody knew what that dealer had the car for. So you could actually make good deals, especially if you were a return customer. Like my father bought a couple cars from the same dealership. But if not, then nowadays, you know, dealer goes, oh, they have 6 of these cars, here's the prices on there, so if you want to go there, go get them, because there's no money in cars. There's really no money in sales for cars. They don't have a lot of room. All right. NASCAR cars were based on real cars, and they had to sell a certain amount. So in the 70s and 80s, they actually had to sell a certain amount of each car. So if they wanted to race the Monte Carlo, the Monte Carlos were actually Monte Carlos. Now they would take them, they'd get a couple from the dealership, and they would really do a deep dive into them. But if you put a real Monte Carlo next to it, it was a Monte Carlo, not this plastic shell thing now that says the words Monte Carlo, or says the words Camaro, or says the words Mustang. Just depends on what stickers you put on it. And NASCAR's like, oh, well, we're going to kind of change the bodies now so that the plastic body kind of looks more like the old Camaro, but it doesn't. They all look the same. They all have the same aerodynamics. And it sucks. All right, next, maps and reading addresses. So the other day, and I think what maybe triggered this whole thing was, the other day I was driving down the road, and I saw... I couldn't find this address, and I'm like, I remember as a kid, you would get an address, you would write it down, say 15663 US 19, and you would drive down, and every building and every driveway would have the address somewhere so they could see it. But they don't do that anymore. There's a lot of buildings, a lot of businesses that don't even have the address out front, and they don't even advertise their address. So, really strange. All right, next. Let's see, station wagons. So a lot of times, we've already talked about this on various videos. When we meet a station wagon, is everybody misses getting in the back and either facing your brother or sister or sibling, or you face the back and just stare at the people driving behind you. And that was always pretty fun, especially if the electric window was down. You could throw popcorn and stuff at people behind you. All right. The Chilton's book. Next one, children's book, number 19. So a children's book, and they also had here's a Haynes book. So this is a Haynes book right here. But the first thing you did before, there was no internet, there was no YouTube. So when you bought a used car, the first thing you did was buy the Chilton's book or the Haynes book. And that told you how to fix everything in the book. If you look at this here, and it goes through, it has everything from how to change the tire to how to take the engine apart, piece by piece, because that's what they do. And I know they still have these books, but super hard to find the one you need. Before, you could just go up to Walmart or Kmart or wherever, Grants, and they would have them there. Next was, before cell phones, if you were at school, like in high school, if you didn't know where the parties or the get-togethers or who was doing what by Friday at the end of school day, your weekend kind of sucked. Because you'd have to drive around town and go cruising and find somebody that knew where somebody else was going. And I spent about half my high school years with a group of people in my Chevelle driving around trying to figure out where the party was that we were supposed to be meeting up with, or going to Englishtown, New Jersey, and finding out everybody was the Maple Grove Dragway for the weekend, or vice versa. Because you didn't have a phone and nobody could reach out to you. Now the other thing is, you could stay late as you want because nobody had a phone. And a lot of times if a cop pulled you over and it was late at night, you're like, hey, I'm heading home and I don't have a phone and I'm just trying to get home. And the cops were really mellow about stuff back then. All right. Next one is full service gas stations with the little ding 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 ding. When you drove over, there was an air hose that would go across the whole parking lot, and when you drove in, you pulled in, full service. People would come out, they'd ask you what kind of gas you wanted. You could get leaded or unleaded at the time, and gas was like $1. I remember when I went to a round, it was like a little over $1 a gallon. Everybody was freaking out. But you could get high octane, and they would clean your wipers or clean your windshields, check your oil, all that stuff. Now, I did that a lot on my own cars anyway, but you know, if you're dressed up, you're going to school, you're going to work or something, sometimes you pull in, they pop the hood, they go under, come out, hey, your oil's good, they close the hood on you, check your fluids while you're getting gas. And they would carry a lot of money with them because a lot of people just paid cash back then. We didn't have debit cards and everything. So you just paid cash and they pay out a big roll, and you know, you gave them the money and they give you the cash. And also, a lot of times you could get glasses, like drinking glasses and stuff that would be like collector stuff if you bought a lot of gas. All right, next, vinyl roofs. Now, I complain a lot about vinyl roofs now when I go junkyard diving, but it's because the vinyl roofs that were on there, they destroyed and rust out cars because they're outside all the time, and that's just what happens. But I think vinyl roofs looked really good on Cadillacs and Lincolns and stuff back in the day, and I kind of miss them, especially the half roofs. They looked really neat. Air shocks next. So I liked air shocks. The first, especially if you're a guy who owns Chevelles or Camaros, actually more Chevelles. First thing you did was get air shocks, and then you could either get bumper bars or ladder bars. So, and they connect underneath to the rear axle and to give you more grip. And so bumper bars, or the bumper bars had the little bumps on them, and like the little rubber stoppers, like you used to call them bumpers, and ladder bars look like a ladder. They both do basically the same thing. And then you had air shocks so that you can lift the back air up, and it took like an hour or two to put the air up and put the air lines in, and then you could put big M50 giant tires on the back, because I used to love that look. Now everybody likes to look where all the tires are the same, but I used to love having big giant tires in the back and real skinny ones in the front. And I still think to this day Chevelles always look better when they have big fat rubber on the back and little skinny tires on the front. And that kind of gets me to the last one, is Cam 2 racing gas. So Cam 2 racing gas, I don't even know, excuse me about that, I don't even know if Cam 2 is still available. I don't know if it's even still around. But Cam 2 racing gas was 114 to 117 octane. I believe at the time it had like some aviation fuel in it, and you could get it at Sunoco. It was $3 a gallon when the rest of the gas was like $1 a gallon. And I remember this kid, George, that hung out with us. George had his mom's Chevette, the Chevy Chevette, 4-cylinder. And he was watching us put Cam 2 racing gas into our cars, and I had a big block at the time. Excuse me again. But George put it into that Chevette and just burned all the valves in about 20 minutes. So, yeah, maybe it's not a good idea that they don't have Cam 2 anymore. But anyway, that is my list. What do you guys think? Put down your comments below. Did I miss anything? This is for those of us who grew up before cell phones, before the internet, and this is the stuff that affected us cruising and all that kind of stuff. So, oh, by the way, the one thing that I kind of remember is a 12-second car was super fast back in the 80s. An 11-second car, you better bring a ticket from the racetrack. And if you said you had a 9 or 10-second car, we all knew you were full of crap. They didn't really exist unless you were like a pro race drag driver back in the day. Anyway, I look forward to your comments. Look forward to what I missed. What do you guys think? Let me know, and have a great weekend. I've been a little under the weather for the last couple weeks, but you'll start seeing more of us, more videos and everything again. But let me know what you think. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, guys.